Here's 5 wide receivers I think you could buy low going into week 7. Number 1 is Odell Beckham. I know I advise you to bench him this week, but the schedule gets easier as the weeks go on. So Beckham, if he does break 1 or 2 this week, it's going to be too late to buy him. But right now, I think you could get Beckham pretty cheap. He don't put up the numbers like he did on the New York Giants, and Mayfield not getting them the ball. But if you could get Beckham for a low 2 running back or something, or a 2 and 3 receiver that you're not in love with, then you go out there and you trade for OBJ. He's still going to get some targets. He'll still hit 1,000 yards on the season, I think. I've been advising you to stay away from him, but this might be the lowest his stock is right now. So if you could go out there and get Odell Beckham, I think you could get him for pretty much something you didn't expect to trade him and get for in the last few weeks. Second guy's Tyler Lockett. He's coming off 2 bad games for Seattle, but his stock is going to rise again, I think, this week versus Arizona in a division matchup shootout. Tyler Lockett's coming off 2 bad games. We saw him a few weeks ago, though, with a 40-point fantasy day, but once again, it was versus Dallas. But he's in a top 3 offense in this league. So Tyler Lockett, I think he'll be all right. He's a good number 2 receiver to have on your team. His stock's been low the last 2 or 3 weeks. To be honest, I've been trying to trade him in a few leagues, and I'm not getting what I want from him. So now I'm holding on to him. Even a manager rejecting CeeDee Lamb for Tyler Lockett, which was surprising. His stock is at an all-time low. So this week is the week to go get him if a manager's really desperate to trade Lockett. Because if he has a blow-up game of 25-30 points, the value's going to skyrocket up just like Julio Jones's did last week, from pretty much he wasn't going to go play, and then bang, he has a big 35-point fantasy day. So Tyler Lockett, the second guy to go out there and try to buy low before it's too late and you got to pay the max price to go get him and put him on your fantasy team. The third guy is Allen Robinson. With Nick Foles behind the helm, Robinson's numbers have gone down over the last few weeks. He's more of a number 2 receiver for fantasy, in my opinion. Seen a lot of teams draft him at number 1. And I was never a big Allen Robinson guy, to be honest. Even that big year he had on Jacksonville, where he went for 15 touchdowns and like 1,400 yards or something. But Robinson, his stock is low, I think. You could get him pretty cheap. He's definitely reliable, though, as a number 2 receiver. If he's your lead receiver, that's a little bit of a problem. And production you'll be getting at the wide receiver spot. So Allen Robinson's the 3rd receiver I would target out there, and you don't got to pay a big price. The 4th is Cooper Kupp. He hasn't been putting up the big numbers like he did last season, where he had a couple 30 to 40 point fantasy days. Kupp. The Rams are going back to ground and pound in a way, but Kupp, he's too good not to get numbers and beat defenders off the line of scrimmage. So Cooper Kupp, I think you could go out there and basically get him for nothing at all. You get him for something cheap, and he's worth the risk, in my opinion. Kupp, he's still a number 2 receiver for fantasy, and he's definitely a guy worth to go get before week 8. I know he has the Bears, so his stock might even drop lower, but if you need a receiver, Cooper Kupp, he won't be a bad guy to go get this week or the week after, because I don't see him having that big game. Goff, he trusts Kupp. He just got to connect with him. And last week we saw him miss him on a couple deep balls. And if he connected with him on 1 or 2 of those, Kupp would have had a huge fantasy day. So I'm not that worried about Cooper Kupp. So if you could go get him and a manager's disgruntled with him, you go out there and get him. And the 5th and final guy I'm going to target and try to trade for before it's too late is Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow and Boyd have a good rapport. Boyd, he's had double-digit fantasy points in 5 out of the 6 games he's played in this year. Last week, he would have had a bigger game if he wasn't stopped at the 2-yard line on one of those plays. You know, Cincinnati's going to have to throw the ball a ton because they're going to be trailing most of the season. Burrow's doing good. You got T. Higgins there, too. A.J. Green he don't look the same, even though he had his best fantasy game of the season last week with 14 fantasy points. But Tyler Boyd, he's a good possession receiver, good hands. Burrow trusts him. Many people don't think he's good, in my opinion, but I like Boyd. He's on a few of my teams, and I think this is a week you go out there and try to trade him after 2 so-so performances in the last 2 weeks for Boyd. So that's 5 receivers I'm going to target and try to trade for heading into week 7 of the fantasy football season before they blow up this week and their stock goes up and it's too late.